I just want to say welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ann McClure. I'm a residential realtor with McInerney Associates, and I'm licensed and work by referral in close in Northern Virginia and Montgomery County, Maryland, and some of the other suburbs. And then I've got partners who help me across the river in DC. And you are joining us for Ask the Expert. We're so happy you're here today. Our topic today is an engaging discussion on lock technology and locksmiths. And so I'm going to depart for 1 second. I don't know, Jennifer, if you can mute, but we're getting that fuzziness from your speakers coming through. It seems to have stopped now, but I just thought I would mention it. So again, we're here for an engaging discussion on lock technology and locksmiths. And until I started talking with my friend Alex Salinas here, I was not aware, even though I've worked with him and referred him many times, I was not aware of all of the nuances of locksmithing and securing your home and different directions that that can lead. And we're going to talk more about that. But first, I want to say that you're at Ask the Expert, and this is something that we do every couple of weeks. We interview a local expert, and we wanted to bring good information to our clients and people watching, and also shed some light on a really good local business. And this week, our really good local business is Alpha Locksmith, and we have joining us here my friend Alex Salinas. Hi, Alex.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invite, Ann.
Well, you're welcome. We're so happy that you're here, and I'm so happy to have gotten to know you years ago and to be able to confidently refer you to clients. I think you're helping one this week, in fact. So
Indeed.
So we're very pleased, and I'll do a little more intro of you in just a moment. I wanted to let people know that this recording will be available on our website, on Facebook, on the Ann McClure Facebook page, Ann McClure Realtor, and then on YouTube. And then also we're going to give it to Alex. So if you're watching because you know Alex, he will have a copy of it also. So if you want to refer back, or we hope you'll tell friends or family that you saw some great information that they could watch, particularly if they are changing locks or have questions about locksmithing and keys and options and so on. We want to keep the good information flowing. So don't keep us a secret. I always like to start with a really quick market update. So I get a lot of questions about where the market is going. It's a very interesting time in real estate. It's an exhausting time. It's very good for sellers. And so what I want to share with you this week is that all 6 areas posted increases in the number of newly ratified contracts. Now, when I say 6 areas, you know, we're looking DC and then around the Beltway, right? So Montgomery County had a 19.9% increase over last week, and then Prince William was 15.7%. Northern Virginia, which is Fairfax and Arlington County, and then the cities of Falls Church, Fairfax, and Alexandria had a 13.4% rise. And then the remaining jurisdictions, Prince George's, Washington, D.C., and Loudoun, were all up in the single digits. So this continues the trend we've seen all year long. And that trend also includes the number of days, or we call it days on market, that a property spends before it goes under contract. And this year, right now, or this past week, the average was 19 days before contract. And that's compared to 28.5 days this time last year, but there was a pandemic. And then 31.2 days in 2019, which was a very robust, fast real estate year. So you compare that we're down, you know, not quite half, but a lot from where we were in 2019. That's a big deal. So we're only a few days off from the end of the first half of the year, and new contract activity is up 25.8% over where it was the same 6-month period last year. So that is a tremendous increase in volume. And you think about the fact that the contract activity is higher and the inventory is lower, you can imagine why it's so crazy out there. So we're going to keep an eye on things and keep you posted. If you've got questions about your specific neighborhood or one you're interested in, or you have a friend or family member who does, let them know. We're always happy to chat, no obligation. So I don't want to delay any further. I want to get to our guest today, Alex Salinas. So again, Alex, thank you for joining us.
Again, thank you for having us, Ann.
You're welcome. Alex owns Alpha Locksmith, and it is a family-owned and operated business that's been around since 2000. So They're, gosh, in their 21st year, Alex. That's exciting.
Indeed. Well, just a little bit background about myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm representing the family. It is a family-owned and operated business. I lived in DC since 1975, 1976. So I wasn't born here, but I'm pretty much a native. I'm very
Mhm.
familiar with the DC region and its needs and the homeowners and all the neighborhoods. I am one of five in our team. So I have my two grown boys. My my daughter-in-law and my wife. So it's a family business, and all of us put together, we're Alpha Locksmith. And again, I'm just representing us.
Well, that's awesome. I always think when somebody says they're a native in DC, I feel like you're a native after like 10 years because there seem to be no natives because it's such a transient city. So yeah, you've been here a while for sure. And I would like to point out, you've been in the region for a while and you serve the whole region. So Maryland, DC, Virginia, you do serve all of that. So
that's correct. We serve the tri-state area. We're based out of Maryland, but that's not to say we'll go as far as Baltimore. I mean, we'll actually go wherever our clients are. I don't normally go to Front Royal, but I will go to Front Royal if you have, if you have a referral. So but the tri-state area we do service anything
yeah.
that within the Beltway.
Well, that's a pretty impressive spread there, Front Royal to Baltimore.
Yeah.
I understand you're not seeking business in the
No,
far
I'm
region.
not. No, not by any means.
But if you get referred by a good client, you go, right? So,
indeed, that's absolutely correct.
And Alex, one of the things that I learned about you that I also want to make sure people know, and I learned this pretty early on, is you or people on your team, maybe I should say, and are also talented carpenters. And so what's great about that is doors sit in frames, and a lot of times there's carpentry work that needs to be done. So having a good carpenter who's also a locksmith, I think is a rare find, and B, is really, really helpful. And I just wanted to make sure people knew that you bring that skill to the table also.
Indeed. So not all carpenters are not locksmiths necessarily, and there are very few locksmiths that know carpentry.
Right.
And what that means is we're able to service any types of doors, and carpentry involves framing, involves door installations, door repairs. Sometimes whenever I get called to service a lock, it's not a lock issue, but it's a door issue. Especially, and you've probably noticed this around your home, where you have a wooden door in the fall. I'm sorry, in the spring, because of the humidity, the doors tend to swell up, and then the locks tend to stick, doors tend to stick, and that's the same whether it's a metal door, an exterior door, an interior door. So things expand and contract.
Yes, and I'm actually glad that you mentioned this, because it means you're not just dealing with the locks, you're dealing with the whole door. And that kind of brought us into a conversation when we were talking recently about the different kinds of locksmiths, because I always think about it in terms of residential real estate because that's what I do. But then there are locksmiths who do cars or safes or commercial, right? And could you elaborate on the different kinds of locksmiths and why someone should call? And I think you did kind of just hit on it. Call a locksmith over a handyman. And I think it's going to go back to what you were saying about the skill set.
Sure. So what happens is when locksmiths, in general, professionals, we're trained professionals, meaning that we know our trade, we know locks, and most of us know doors. Okay. Again, we're not all carpenters, but we're very familiar. And what happens is because we have this training, we go through not only the initial training, but we go through continuing education to keep up with the trends, to keep up with technology and home automation and that sort of thing. Not only that, but we're laws and ADA regulations, fire regulations, and codes and building codes. So we have to abide by all of that. Whereas a handyman, he comes in, he'll replace your lock. He'll say, he'll look at a lock and he'll tell you, you've got to replace it. Where we'll come in and we'll fix the lock when it doesn't have to be replaced.
Yeah, see, that's nice, because if you can preserve the lock and the door, and you don't have that big drilled out ugly hole, I think that's so much better, right?
That's correct. So in recent, well, there's a lot of new construction in DC. There's a lot of historical homes and residential property in Northeast and Capitol Hill, Georgetown, and that sort of area, where you have to preserve the doors. You can't just slap on any lock. And sometimes, you know, even though you want to do a smart lock, it's not feasible because it's the type of door that you have, the type of framing that you have. There are many factors. So sometimes it's just not ideal to have. And again, this is something that your locksmith professional can help you with and work out your options for your needs.
So I like the way you talked about the specialized skills and your locksmith professional, because one of the things that really surprised me, and I guess it shouldn't have, is that there's a lot of educational background and training and specialized equipment that can't just be purchased by the general public. And then I think people realize. So we just wanted to have you touch on like the background checks, the training and continuing ed and licensing requirements, and even how you can get your hands on specialized equipment, but it would actually be illegal for other people too, right?
Sure. Indeed. So again, locksmith professionals, we have it's just like any trade, like a journeyman or an electrician. You know, we go to people's homes, we go to businesses, you know, and we go to secure areas, and as such, we have to go not only through the training but through background checks. So initially, every licensed locksmith, we go to the process of the proper training, meaning a trade school. And before we even apply to the trade school, we go through the background check, meaning we need to provide our fingerprints. We need to provide literally our birth certificate and everything. We go through the state background check and a federal background check. And that's just for the school. And then after that's completed, whether it's a year and a half, and once you complete your training, at that point, you go through the state requirements to get your license. And you go through that same process again, because something could happen in the interim. So you still, in order to get employed or get licensed, you have to go through that background check. And your employer, if you're working at any locksmith that's working for another locksmith, they would actually provide those background checks as well. We just can't hire anyone. And again, because we have specialized equipment to gain access. I'm not going to say forced entry, but to gain access into pick locks and our locksmithing equipment that has to do with decoding and lock picking and things of that nature. A lot of this equipment is only sold to locksmiths. Now, if you go to a hardware store, they have key machines, key duplicators. These folks can actually buy a key duplicator, but it's totally different than a locksmith. Whereas a handyman is really not required or may not know the laws, and that's where the laws and the regulations and keeping up with the state requirements that we know. ADA, fire codes, building codes, all of that goes into play when you're doing locksmith. You can't just slap on any lock. You can't just, you have to take a lot of things into account, especially on a commercial property.
Yeah, because didn't you say there's equipment that, like, if I got pulled over and I had certain equipment in my car,
right,
and he saw it.
If I loan you my car and I happen to have locksmithing equipment, my lock picks and then certain decoders and key duplicators that are only sold to locksmith, you would actually get pulled over, and depending on you would, I wouldn't want to be in that position being caught with. So it actually is illegal to own locksmithing equipment.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to show the credentials.
That's correct.
Last time we did Ask the Expert, we had a home automation specialist on, and we're going to talk about it in a couple more questions, but this is a trend that we're seeing a lot more of. People wanting their locks, their ability to lock and unlock their door and to track who's coming through it to be tied to automation in their house. And you made a really good point, which is that a home automation person may be able to install a lock, but they're not going to be able to fix a door. So if there are issues that get into any kind of, problems with the door, the frame, the installation, beyond a very basic install, you may need a locksmith still anyway. So this is a good person to have in your, I'm saying Rolodex, smartphone, whatever, right?
Sure. And if there's the applications there's always an application for innovation and for like an Alexa type of integrated smart home, that sort of thing. but in certain applications, it's just not feasible, especially like, and I'll give you just a couple of examples. If you have a high-rise building, the older
Mhm.
doors with metal doors, you know, some of these locks will not accommodate a smart lock. You know, you just have to have a standard mechanical lock. You may opt at that point. I would probably suggest like a high security key. It's a key that can't be duplicated. You know, something that we can
Like those
provide.
Medco or whatever they're
Like the
called.
medical keys, yeah, there's
Medco.
special keys that are high security that only locksmiths have access to, like myself. Um, or some of the older style doors, like in Georgetown or Northeast, in the Capitol Hill area, where these doors, you know, because of the way they're older and they're thicker. The older doors are older doors are thicker than normal standard doors, and they just can't accommodate the smart locks and the home automation. But
Yeah.
very rare. But you know, we can go through that. We can go through that
Yeah.
depending on. Mhm.
And somebody can call you and consult with you about this too on their particular house. I think all of this is pointing to the fact that locksmithing really is kind of a nuanced skill or trade. We talked a little bit about drilling out a lock, and it's always unattractive when I show a property like that. It has that big disc, you know, covering where they drilled
Right,
it
right.
out. And that's something you always try to avoid as a locksmith, right? I mean, you don't drill it out. You've got a set of skills the consumer's paying you for where you leave
Right.
everything intact.
So part of being a locksmith and what a skill that most of us have, and again, it's a skill, and even I have to keep working at it, and I actually do practice from time to time, because you just like playing a piano or playing a guitar, just playing an instrument, you sort of get rusty. It's lock picking. Okay, so whenever we gain and if you're locked out of your home, out of your office, we can pick the locks, not necessarily damage it. You know, you're paying it, you're hiring a professional, you're getting the service that, you know, without, for us to gain access to, you know, if you're locked out, if you leave your keys inside for whatever reason, without damaging your door, without causing any harm to the lock, or having to replace your door and your lock. So that's really where the locksmithing professional comes in, and the skill for lock picking comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I really did. I've learned so much from talking with you. And there's another thing that I learned that I think people forget or they lose track of. You don't always need to replace a lock. You can simply rekey a lock. Can you explain the difference?
Okay. There's two reasons you might want to replace a lock. One, that the lock is just completely worn out, and things, you know, it's mechanical locks, even your smart and electronic locks, they'll wear out, just like your TV remote. I don't know if you ever had a TV remote that it stops working. So things do kind of wear out, and that's when you want to replace it. But 9 times out of 10, if you're purchasing a home, if you're going through a new property and you want to just not rekey it, but if you want to change the locks, and that's a term that most homeowners use, I want to change my locks. Well, you don't really need to change your locks, because you're just on the hardware itself. If you're talking about 3 doors, 4 doors, you know, it can add up to several $100s. Whereas a locksmith will come in and he'll take your hardware, he'll take the locks, and we will issue new keys. We'll take the lock apart, we'll take the cylinders out, take the pins out, or the tumblers, as most people call them, the little pin tumblers, and we issue a new key combination for all the locks. And we can either do a master key system, meaning we can key them all alike, one key for all the locks, or different keys. And, you know, there's different ways to go about it depending on the homeowner's needs.
You know, I just want to point out that you made a really good point that I want to make sure people hear. You will pay several $100s if you change locks on several doors. But if you hire a locksmith who rekeys them, it actually pays for itself, right?
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. And most people aren't aware. And again, a handyman or someone that's working in your house, they'll come in, or a contractor will come in and change all the locks. And I've seen, after the fact, I've seen this happen many times where the locks, they're perfect. I'm like, there's no need for you to change the locks. There was really no need. We could have just simply done a rekey, taking the locks apart, use it, and saved you several $100s, you know.
See, and that's why we do Ask the Expert, Alex, because we learn things like this. So we're so glad that you're here telling us. You know, a funny thing, I do this morning swim program, and yesterday morning I was in the pool bright and early chatting with somebody, and she's got 3 kids and they've lost their keys like a million times and they leave their doors open. And anyway, more than, you know,
So
we would advise as
Mhm.
professionals in the business. And she was asking me about, you know, the pros and cons of keyless entry. And I said, you know, it's interesting that you asked this, because I'm actually going to be speaking with a locksmith. So I know there are many applications, but if you could talk a little bit about, you know, pros and cons of keyless entry versus a good old fashioned metal key, and the applications, that would be great.
Sure. So the keyless entry, and there we go. So there are different types of keyless entry, meaning smart locks or digital locks. So you have the keyless entries are you have two different types of two different genres, if you will. You have some that are you can incorporate with your home automation, whether it's Alexa, whether it's, you know, your Nest, or you know, anything like that will work with your Wi-Fi home network. Or a standalone. There are pros and cons for both of them. And the standalones, the difference would be that the standalones obviously don't work with your home Wi-Fi, and you have sole control over who you have give access to. These types of systems, they're limited to, you have to be on site to program, like the lock on the left that you see here on the left. You have to manually program the lock and manually delete codes. Enter codes and delete codes. These types of locks, generally, they take anywhere from 15 to 30 user codes, whereas the ones on the right, which are your Yale, your Schlegs, and your Quicksets, they can accommodate up to 50, 60 codes, and then you can add remotely, delete remotely, all from your phone or from an app or from your computer. You don't need to be on site. You can let you know, your neighbor in case of emergency, or you can let your dog walker in. You can program them to certain dates, certain times, again, remotely, and it'll just be set. Whereas the standalones, again, they each have their own applications and they have their pros and cons, but they basically provide you the same level of security.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, the smart lock on the right is Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled, and it's got tons of, you know, applications because of its connectivity, right?
That's
the one
correct.
on the left is really just like you said, a standalone. It's I mean, you don't have a key, but it's more like it in that sense, right?
That's correct. And you can see right there in the middle, it has a key cylinder. That's for that is for a bypass if the battery ever, you know, wears out, or you forget to replace the battery, so you don't you lock yourself out. Now there are other standalones that are keyless, where you can still bypass the battery should it die. And I don't have one there, but there are other locks that are still standalone that are keyless, and then you can just, again, program them. Again, the advantages to the Wi-Fi, to the standalone, it just depends on your needs and the level of security that you want, and the freedom that you want, and how many user codes. So
yeah, I mean, I imagine for someone
I wouldn't recommend one over the other. They're both very good locks, and they both have their applications, and it's just a matter of what your needs are.
Yeah.
And your budget. Because the ones on the right, you know, and your budget, yeah, because the ones on your right, they can go as high as $400, and then the ones on the left, you know, they're a little bit more, you know, you're flexible with that.
Okay. Well, with people going with more and more home automation, like we were talking about earlier, and we had our guest at the last Ask the Expert, I'm just curious, Alex, roughly what percentage of people that you see in your business would you say are tying their locks to some kind of home automation system?
Well, it's funny you ask, because now, you know, after pre-COVID, I was doing maybe one per month, you know, one lock per month, one lock installation per month out of, let's say, out of 20. Okay, people weren't, you know, they weren't using them as much. But now, during COVID and after COVID, because everyone's working from home, and they realize, hey, I need to let someone in. They just realize the need and how accessible it is and how easy it is to just let someone in, right? So I'm actually doing just this week, I've done 5 of them.
Wow.
So you do the math. So I would say it's definitely picking up. It's a trend that is the people are I'm not going to say more aware of, but they're realizing that their needs have changed. And again, I think a lot has to do with COVID. So it's just a lot. It makes life easier for a lot of people.
There have been some benefits to that hideous virus.
Yes,
and
indeed.
it's hard. It seems
Right.
weird to talk about it that way, but it spurred so much human innovation and awareness of what possibilities are. You know,
right. We've all learned to cope with working from home and adapting to just our different environment and the new norm. And that this is one of them. So smart locks actually do play a factor in home automation and making life easier for folks.
So another question, and I know we're starting to run short on time, but you know, in real estate, one of the things we've often said is, you know, you're advised not to put your keys like in a bowl or you know, a console table right inside your door, because God forbid a car thief comes along, thieves are able to read the signals from the other side of the door, and they watch your patterns and, you know, try to see if you leave your keys just inside, and they can lift your car when you're asleep. So I guess like with anything with the right equipment, something could be hacked. But do you think that this makes any of these locks more or less safe than a traditional lock?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's just a different form of security. Just like your computer can be hacked, if someone gains access to your computer, to your network, they can actually gain access to your, especially if you have everything's automated. I mean, just think of the repercussions, not just your home, but if someone does hack into your, that's why we have, you know, safe measures for our wireless, you know, for our home automation system. So the answer would be, you're just as vulnerable as the next guy, as anyone with a mechanical key. You just, again, have to take the precautions, and you're only as safe as you're aware, meaning that if you lose your keys, definitely, you know, and that's happened. If you lose your keys at the gym or at the market, obviously, you know, you don't want to do that, but then you're compromising your security.
Right. I mean, there are ways we do it all the time, handing our credit card to a server, or, you know, doing work online where you're using passwords in a Wi-Fi location where you can be compromised, or, I mean, there are all kinds of. Yeah,
identity theft happens all the time. It happens, you know, it's even more, we're all more vulnerable now than we were years ago, I would say, because everything we do is online, everything we do is on our phone. So again, if they're able to hack into if someone's able to take your ID and somehow gain access to your passwords and everything, then it's, you know, your security is also compromised.
Well, and it's also good to have somebody like you that they can really talk through pros and cons with. Alex, before we wrap up, would you share with us any like cool gadgets or applications you're seeing out there in the, you know, locksmith lock secure world? Security, not security as in data or anything, but
sure. And we all sort of and I guess we're thinking like high tech and things of that nature, and things that'll make life easier for us. And those type of things do exist, and they're available out there, but they come at a price. So something that's more affordable for us, even for myself, you know, we always want to stick with something with a name brand, something like Schlage or Yale, something. Don't go out and get like something generic or on Amazon or something that's on sale, something innovative, because normally these types of novelties, they're not tested and they're just novelties. But anything, so yeah. But as far as some cool gadgets, you know, there are things that have come along, especially for padlocks, the way we and you've seen it, I guess, the commercials where you can open and unlock your car with your phone with an app. You can do the same thing for motorcycles. You can actually get different types of locks for applications, even for cabinet locks or your briefcases and things of that nature. So there's for lockers, there's actually those type of applications and smart locks for cabinet locks and padlocks and motorcycles and things like that. which they're pretty cool actually.
So maybe one day kids won't have the old combination lock on their locker anymore, huh?
Right, that's absolutely correct. I think they're
Yeah.
going to do away with that so that you can pop them right open. Yeah, but
Well,
yeah, and anything that's for the home, you can certainly go get a cool gadget, but it comes at a price. They're not
right.
that made affordable yet.
Well, those were the questions I have today, and I have to say I learned so much about this, so much more than I already knew, and I was already a big fan of telling clients about you. We wanted to make sure that people have your contact information. So this is Alex's, again, the company that he and his family own, Alpha Locksmith, and their contact information. If you note, they've got 24/7 emergency service available, which is fantastic. I will say that I had a problem at a listing that was really hot, and I had showings scheduled all day. And I had called one of the big locksmiths in the area where I probably wouldn't get as quality of an individual coming out. I won't mention any names. And they said they could be there in 3 hours and it'd be $230. And I called Alex and he said he could be there in an hour and it was less than half the price. So yeah, really, really great. That was a while ago, so I don't know if that would still be the case on pricing, but it made a huge difference to me and my client. And I highly endorse you, Alex. I think you're great, and I always feel happy to be able to pass along your name. And then here, people can see all the different services you do.
Indeed, and something that I just want to highlight just briefly is that we work on anything that has a lock on it. Meaning, if it's a commercial door, if it's a residential door, if it's a building door, if it's a hospital door, anything like that, we service the doors, we service the hardware, we service the door closers. We'll replace the door, or in certain cases, like a commercial application, like a storefront. We replace broken glass, so we do glass replacement and glass installation. That's another area that we've also branched into that most locksmiths won't even get involved. But that's what we service as well. So that's great. You see the different residential versus the commercial. You see the two columns there.
Well, so I encourage people, if you've got questions or want to consult with him about making changes to what you have, or getting all your locks commonly keyed, or you've got a commercial business or a family member who does, please pass along his contact info. Again, we're going to make today's recording available on our website, our Facebook and YouTube, and we're going to pass it along to Alex. Alex, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank our producer, Jennifer Connors, behind the scenes, the wizard who showed her face briefly at the beginning. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank all of you for watching today. And we hope, again, you won't keep us a secret. Please tell your friends and colleagues and family members about Ask the Expert. And if there's a particular topic you're interested in, please let us know. We will be happy to bring in an expert and ask some good questions. If you've got questions after this, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll get you answers or put you in touch with Alex. And if you've got questions about local real estate, or you need a referral to a realtor somewhere else in the country, I'm always happy to help. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.